Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to The Docket, presented by Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Mata, and today we are going to be diving into one of the most controversial death investigations in recent memory. And I'm, of course, talking about the Ellen Greenberg case. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with it, back in January of 2011, 27-year-old Philadelphia schoolteacher Ellen Greenberg was found dead in her apartment with 20 stab wounds. Sounds sus, right? The manner of death was initially ruled homicide, then changed to suicide, and has remained one of the most debated forensic determinations in modern history. And that is no BS. That is for real. This thing has a life of its own, and it's been insane. So just last month, after Ellen's parents had been fighting to get this thing in front of another independent medical examiner in order for them to do another findings in terms of what the autopsy was showing them, in order to get somebody that they didn't feel like was under the thumb of those in power that for whatever reason keep coming up with this determination of suicide. So again, on October 10th of 2025, Philadelphia's chief medical examiner, Dr. Lindsay Simon, issued a comprehensive independent review after being asked whether the manner of death should be changed from suicide to could not be determined or homicide. Her conclusion, it remained suicide. To help us understand the forensic and investigative aspects of this case, I'm joined by my friend, who really needs no introduction to the true crime audiences out there. And I'm talking about Derrick Levasseur. For those of you who may not know, Derrick is a retired undercover cop from Central Falls, Rhode Island, where he investigated everything from human trafficking to violent crimes. He's also the winner of Big Brother 16, which I'm sure a ton of you know him from. He's also the host of two hit podcasts, obviously Crime Weekly, but his own joint, which is Detective Perspective, which I love. And he's the star of the investigative discovery investigation ID series Breaking Homicide, where he reopens cold cases. He's consulted on a ton of high profile cases, and he's really become one of the most respected voices in true crime media. And so without further ado, let's bring him on. What's up, brother?
What's up, big guy? How's it going?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Yeah, this is a good case to talk about for sure. And I just covered it recently, so it's still fresh on the brain. Although, on full disclosure for the experts in the Ellen Greenberg case, I don't remember every single detail. So if I get a name wrong or a date wrong or a timestamp wrong, I apologize in advance.
Yeah, you look, man, nobody can sweat us on that. Like you and I and anybody in true crime content, we cover a lot of stuff, and our brains can frankly only hold so much shit. So nobody's going to send Derrick on not like, because believe me, there's plenty of facts where, if I were to go on a Jeopardy show against, somebody who's like obsessively covering the Greenberg case, I'm clearly not going to be able to compete. So, all right, look, man, I'm really excited to have you on. And I'm going to tell my audience now, we over here at Defense Diaries, obviously I'm a former defense attorney of 20 plus years. You're a cop, former, and we have different opinions on different cases, which I respect. And that has nothing to do with anything with respect to what we're going to talk about today. So I just want to tell my chat, don't be coming after Derrick because he thinks that Karen Reed is guilty. Don't be coming after Derrick because he thinks Richard Allen's guilty. Now, as far as the Richard Allen thing goes, I am going to try to twist your arm, have you back on another day where you try to convince me why you think he's guilty, and I try to convince you why I think he's innocent.
Oh, you'll kill me on that one for sure because I don't know all the details. There's definitely things with the ballistics, but I just want to clarify with Karen Reed. I think the jury got it right. I think the way the evidence was and how that investigation was conducted, I've said publicly that I feel it was the right call. Absolutely,
Good.
100%. All I've said, and you can go back and look at the episodes, is that I still believe it's possible that she hit him. That's all I've said is
I
that
think
there's
that's
nothing.
fair.
I think that's the only thing I've said is like there's nothing. If it was that clear cut, it wouldn't be as polarizing as it is, right? There's that gray area where um, we don't know 100%. We don't know 100%. So all I do is give myself that margin by saying, is it possible that she hit him? Of course it is. I think that's reasonable to say. But as far as the judicial process is concerned, how the investigation was conducted originally, the evidence with how it was presented by both sides of the aisle, they crushed the prosecution. So I
I
had
agree.
no issues with the ruling. I think it was fair. I think it shouldn't have gone on as long as it did. I don't even think there should have been a second trial.
I
So
agree.
all of that, we're in agreement on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people get upset. I think with Karen Reed, there's a bigger issue, and it's the mistrust with law enforcement, and it's a representation of that, which is completely warranted, right?
Yeah.
To think that this detective could be talking about you as a victim or as a witness in their
Yeah.
own private text messages, that's scary
It's
because these
scary.
people have the ability to take away your freedom. So when you see an example of this and you understand that it's not an isolated incident, it's unnerving
It
because
is.
any one of us could be Karen Reed, including myself.
Yeah.
And so for that, I understand the emotion attached to this case and why people are so invested in it. And unfortunately, sometimes when you say, because I have no skin in the game, I always try to call it how I see it, balls and strikes. When I
Same.
even say, like, I think it's possible that she hit him. I think even Karen Reed, off record, might say, yeah, listen, I don't know 100% what happened that night.
Right.
People have a hard time with me saying that, but I like what you said. We may be on different sides of the aisle on certain cases, but I respect you as a person and I understand your why. I always
Right.
ask myself, why are they saying this? Is
Right.
there a financial incentive? Is there a motive behind it? Do they have a deal coming up? But if you're coming from a place of authenticity, I have no problem when we disagree. In fact, I like it.
I
That's
love
how we
it.
get to the truth. That's
Right.
especially you. Of course you do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
So
man.
yeah, I just had, not to get off track, but to bring it back, I had Dr. Priya Banerjee on episode 2 of my Ellen Greenberg case. She's
Yeah.
a pathologist who I respect immensely. We disagree on another case, Megan Trussell, but I still had her on and I'm very invested in that case. I've just donated $5,000 of my own money for information in that case.
Yeah.
But we disagree on her opinion of that case, but I still respect her opinion and her professionalism. So we may not agree on every case, but overall we can still have a mutual respect for each other.
Dude, the bottom line is this: spirited debate is the backbone of this country, man. I
Mm.
mean, this country was literally formed on the basis of spirited debate in terms of how we're going to form this thing, and to think that it should be anything other than that is ridiculous. And I love nothing more than having people on this channel in particular, because it's frankly what I did for a living for decades, was argue. I mean, I had a difference of opinion with every prosecutor that I tried a case with. It's what I love it. And to be able to do it with somebody who I know you are, which is you're just a genuine guy, man. And like the things that you say are always coming from the right place. You know what? And it goes to exactly what you were just saying. Like, what is your underlying motive? And I know that you're on the up and up. So if we have a debate on a case, man, that's going to make for good content, number one.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's going to allow both of us to hear one another. And you know what? I've had my mind changed. You know,
Same.
and
Same.
it's just one of
100%.
those things. Yeah. So I just wanted to get that out front so that I
Yeah.
didn't have people at chat coming at you. So
Listen, you said I was on Big Brother. I was also on Traders. There's nothing I haven't heard. Being in reality TV, you would think that being in law enforcement would prepare you for the worst things possible, and that is true. But the reality TV fans, they're at a whole different level. So
oh,
there,
dude.
I appreciate the disclaimer, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I
It
think I'll
is
be
what
okay.
it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, if I were to go onto, various shows, I'd take a lot of heat in that. Yeah, no, and it's like same. You have to have pretty thick skin to be a defense attorney because you
Oh
take a lot
man.
of shit in that particular
Yeah.
profession. So, all
Yep.
right, cool, man. All right, let's start trying to dig into Ellen's case a bit. It is one of those cases that's kind of confounding. Let me just lay out some of the facts in terms of what went down, and just for the basics, if those of you have never heard of the case or not aware of kind of the basics. So January 26, 2011, Ellen's fiance Sam Goldberg returns to their Philly apartment around 5:20. Between 5:20 and 6:30 is kind of what the thing is. And it's during a nor'easter. So there's a huge storm that's coming in. And he ends up going up to the door of the apartment. And because the gym, just understand, is in the building itself, tries to get in. This is his story. And the door's locked from inside. Now it's got one of those, Derek, I don't know, what do you call those sliding locks? You see them in hotels all the time. You
Well,
get
the
a,
latch, the
yeah,
latch,
the latch from the
the
inside.
chain
Right.
latch. Yeah.
Yeah. So he tries to get that thing open. It won't open. He claims that he's yelling in through the crack of the door. Hey, I'm out here. Open up. He's texting like, what the fuck's going on? Let me in. Let me in. And so after reaching or trying to reach Ellen for about an hour, he eventually forces his way in and finds Ellen on the kitchen floor with a knife in her chest. Now, have you ever heard that 911?
Am I familiar with the 911? Of course. And by the way, I'm pulling up the chat so I can follow along. So I'm not on my phone texting here. I can't see the chat in the
Oh, you
StreamYard
can't?
we're in. But
Wait, hold
now
on.
if I can see it even better, but I pulled it up on my phone. But you
What?
asked the question, did I hear the 911 call?
Yeah.
Of course. Oh yeah,
Right.
of course. Yeah.
So before we even dig in, like what are your impressions of that? Like when you like at first blush, first from a cop perspective, and then
Yeah.
like if you're like me, there's not much separation between what you did previously as a job and how your
Yeah.
brain works now. So it's so what were your impressions of that thing?
There's a few things. I don't get too much into the voice analysis aspect of it. I know that's a science of it, or I guess it's
Ah,
not really a science, but it's a it's a it's a subject matter, right? People will
yeah,
tell you the inflections and tones in their voice, tell
it's
you
not my
certain things.
thing
I've
either.
I've never bought into it completely. I'll hear you out. It's kind of like a lie detector. I'll
Right.
take it and look at it and process the information, but I'm not betting my case on
Right.
it.
You're gonna
So
give it the appropriate weight.
I like to go more with what was said,
Yep.
right? And for me, there's a few things. First off, if you've seen the photos, the knife, there's this 10-inch knife sticking out of her chest right near her heart. And he doesn't notice it at first, even though she's on her back facing straight up. It takes him a minute to realize there's this huge handle sticking out of her chest. And I said on my channel, which I thought a lot of people aren't talking about, and to me, it's the most concerning, is one, the fact that his initial response is, oh my God, there's a knife in her chest. She stabbed herself. And then he changes it to, oh, maybe she fell on the knife.
Right.
At no point do you ever hear him say, oh my God, she was stabbed.
Right.
And for me, I try to put myself in that perspective, not as a police officer, but just as a normal civilian. If I'm outside that door and it's locked from the inside, and I just went down to the gym, and he waited over a half hour, but I'm going in right away if my loved one's on the other side, because I don't know if there was a medical emergency, an
Right.
accident. I'm going in to make sure she's okay. But put that aside for a second.
Right.
Once I go inside and I find my fiance on the ground, the first thing I'm thinking, and maybe you'll disagree, is holy shit, she was stabbed. The person who stabbed her is probably still inside this apartment because it was
Right.
locked.
Right.
There's a level of comfortability with him during that phone call where he's not even concerned about his own safety and getting out of the apartment with her, which is concerning to me, because the only way there would be that level of comfortability is if you knew for certain that there was nobody in the apartment. And then the
Right.
question is, how would you know that?
That's an amazing
So
point. That's an amazing point, because I would do the same thing. Like there would be no gap in time of an hour. If my wife were in there and the door were locked, I would have to
you're
assume
going in,
you're going in, man. Like
shoulder
immediately.
in it.
Boom.
5, 10 minutes max.
Max.
We know, I'm sure you have friends and family where you hear about people who have an underlying condition and not even aware of it, or they
Yeah.
fall in the shower or something. Minutes could be the difference between life and death. I'd rather break the latch and have to fix it knowing she's okay because she had her AirPods in or something, opposed to just waiting on the outside knowing I could have saved her. So, yeah,
It's a
I'm going in
no-brainer.
immediately. I'm going in
100%.
immediately. So that's a problem. And then once you're inside, when you walk into that scene, and your first instinct is when she has, according to him, no previous history of self-harm or suicide, it's, oh, she stabbed herself.
Right. Dude, and I came away feeling the same way when I initially heard that thing. I'm like, wow, something's off. Even if and it's hard for me to put aside the concept that somehow he misses this 10-inch handle sticking out of her chest. Like I
Yeah.
was trying to think of a way, like, well, maybe it's a dark handle, I mean, like maybe there's some way this guy doesn't
I
see it.
tried. I
It,
tried, Bob. I tried. I was looking at the photos, and I know in the photos, and I purposely didn't show them on my channel, but they're available online for anybody who wants to see
yeah,
them. To describe it, she's kind of slouched down on the cabinet on her back, and that's a photo that's taken by law enforcement. So there is a possibility she was in a slightly different position when Sam walked in. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt there, but
right.
how much differently could she be in that little narrow space? And to your point, it's I even on my episode, the first part, I was like, oh, maybe she was to her side and the sweatshirt, the way it fell, it kind of fell over it. But when you look at the photos, it's not like a little paring
No,
knife. It's
right.
a big F. I don't know if we're swearing on this thing,
Yeah,
but
we swear over here.
it's a big fucking knife.
Big fucking knife, dude.
And
It is a
so
big fucking
I have a hard time doing it. But, I just want to disclaimer, and you'll appreciate this as a lawyer. I don't know if Sam did it. I don't know if
right.
there's a third party involved. And these are just the conclusions or the observations that I'm making. That's I just want to put that out there. I'm not
100%. And
saying definitively he did it, but these are my concerns.
yeah, and we always say that, look, anything that we're saying is first and foremost our opinions, and it's always allegedly. So like those
Yeah,
two things are in stone always over here. And because look, we weren't there. None of us were there. So like people
correct.
speaking in definitives about what they know and what they don't know, you don't know because you weren't there. So like from
Exactly.
that
There is a
perspective.
possibility, and you'll appreciate this, that Sam's completely innocent.
Right. I mean, there is
It
like
doesn't look good. We're gonna
it
get into
doesn't
it,
look good,
but
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 there,
he, I,
yes.
it's so funny. We're covering BTK right now,
Yep.
and he was involved in so many murders, but there's a specific one, and I apologize, I can't remember the name, but I know the victim's name was Martina. Martina was out on a date with a gentleman. She comes home. They go into the apartment together. They spend the night, and then he leaves. BTK had entered the apartment and hid in the closet all night until after the man left, and then
Wow.
came out and strangled her. Now, if you were looking at that from the outside looking in, your first thought is, who did it?
Right.
The guy
Well,
who was last with her.
exactly. Of
But
course.
this anomaly where you don't expect a serial killer to be hiding in the closet prior to that, but if you're looking at it initially, you would say, oh, it's got to be the guy who was with her all night. He was at the
100%.
date. So that's why I have caution, because we've seen it. We have actual examples where even though it looks a certain way, it may not be exactly the way it appears to be. So we have to be careful. I'd
See,
rather
and that,
see 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to prison for a crime he didn't commit.
dude, you're speaking my language, obviously. But and that part of why I love you is because of that ability for you, even as a former cop who I'm sure you'll admit that there are a lot of cops that form tunnel vision, that they
Yeah.
won't allow themselves to look beyond what they're seeing in front of them for any other possibilities to exist. And then when they hone in, it's detrimental. It's detrimental to an investigation. But that point is so well made, because you can really never know. You really can't, unless you were there. And I say it all the time in our shows. When I was battling in the courtrooms, like I wasn't there as a defense attorney, and I know that the prosecutors weren't there in terms of where the crime was committed at the time that the crime was committed. So we're putting forth theories, right? We're putting forth theories on the evidence that was collected at these things. And so, it's kind of this weird dichotomy when you're watching trials where you're watching these attorneys speak in definitives. You're hearing a prosecutor saying, this is what happened. And I always try to remind people out here in the real world, it's like, look, I know, it's their job to sound, very confident in what they're bringing towards the jury in terms of what their theory of the case is. And the same with defense attorneys. If we're in a case where we've got the ability to put forth the defense, which isn't
Yeah,
always the case, you know what I'm saying? But we come with the same confidence and we're saying, look, this is what happened. And I think that people sometimes forget that there exists the possibility that neither of those things happened or that one or the other did happen. And you
that's
can't
right.
foreclose it because, unfortunately, if there's no direct evidence, namely video or, the oftentimes sketchy eyewitness testimony that somebody that saw something,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just impossible to know. That's why all these cases where you end in kind of reasonable doubt are always so frustrating for people because there is still there's always that scintilla of doubt, no matter which way it goes. You know what I mean?
right.
It's like you can't know, no. It's like
Yeah,
I'm adamant that Richard Allen is absolutely an innocent man, and like I'll die on that hill. But at the same time, can I say 100%? No, of course not. That
no,
would
if
be
you had a
completely
video come out
disingenuous.
tomorrow that shows him doing it, you'd be shocked, but you would say, "Hey, listen, I was wrong.
I was
That's it.
wrong.
I
Right.
get it." You could. I always say, and a couple of people in the comments, I love to play devil's advocate. I love to qualify. I could be 99% about something, but I very rarely ever say, "Oh, I'm 100% certain."
Right.
How can you be? How
You
can you
can't.
be? So yeah,
You
I'm with you,
can't. Yeah,
100%.
you can't. You can't, dude. All right, so let's keep digging into this thing. All right, so yeah, right from the beginning, starting with the 911 call, there's some problems, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
and then ultimately, we're going to get into this, especially with you on the show, in terms of how that investigation ended up going down. But let's wait for a second. So, the
yeah,
ME's report details some interesting findings on page 2 of the new report. Okay, and there she says that Ellen was found supine on the kitchen floor with her head and her shoulder resting against the lower kitchen cabinets. There's multiple stab wounds that are visible on her chest and her upper torso, and that a knife is lodged in her left chest. And the knife lodged in her body appeared to be consistent with an overturned knife set that's found on the kitchen counter.
yep,
And then, so again, and we were talking about doing this case prior, like both of us were talking about this most recent ME's report. And we're like, there's a lot of it where it really does feel like they're really trying to cement their position and back it up with why,
mm,
which isn't necessarily always typical in an ME's report, right? I mean, a lot of times you just get an autopsy, they're giving their findings. That doesn't mean that cops haven't been in their ear prior to with theories that they've developed, and I mean, they'll oftentimes be like, hey, this is what we found at the scene. This is somebody we talked to. You may want to consider this when you're making your findings. This thing is different, right? This thing, because of this like long standing battle over whether or not this was a homicide or a suicide, or if it could be not determined, or unable to
hmm
determine it. It's like, you've got to kind of like read this thing with a grain of salt because, again, like I don't know what the politics are out there. It's like I've seen a lot of coverage on this from a lot of different channels, and I mean, there's talk about that there's people in higher places that are protecting people. I don't know if any of that shit's true. You know what I mean? I have no clue whether any of that's true. But when I did read this, I did feel like they went to great lengths to really point out things that are really pertaining more to the investigation and the autopsy itself in order to try to kind of defend their position. Did you kind of feel that way when you were reading through it?
Yeah, I took it a step further in my analysis and said it read like a police report.
Yeah.
Dr. Lucy Simon wrote the report, and yeah, there is some autopsy findings in there, but it's also confusing because she notes multiple prominent people in the space, Dr. Sarawek, Dr. Henry Lee, who have all said they believe it's a homicide and shouldn't have been ruled a suicide. And then she concludes with, "I think it's still a suicide."
Right.
The problem for me here is it's pretty simple, and it applies to any job you can think of, right? When you work in under the same roof as your colleagues, and you're asked to question their work, there's already an innate pressure put on you to not go against the grain. And
Right.
that's just internal, right? That's not including the politics and the law enforcement agencies that you work with on a daily
Right.
basis, because your determination in this case doesn't only affect this case, it affects every future case and just your way of living every day in that community. So there's
100%.
an internal pressure that might even be subconscious. And so my first problem with it is not having an outside party do it. And I've struggled with this over the years, even working cases when I was doing the show Breaking Homicide, trying to get outside parties to come in and give an independent analysis of a case. There's egos, there's hubris, and there's an inability to accept that they could be wrong. Like you said, tunnel vision.
Yep.
But I would have loved to, and we're going to talk about the investigation. But when it came to this secondary, autopsy report, I would have liked to see an outside party from a different jurisdiction who doesn't have any ties to this community doing that analysis. And maybe they would have came to the same conclusion, but I feel like it would have held more weight, especially if it was just based on the science and the autopsy report and nothing else. Although I will acknowledge right from Dr. Banerjee that that is part of the interpretation of the science, right? Is knowing the outside factors. So
Right.
yeah, they should be considered, but I agree with you. This was kind of an overall assessment and not just specific to the autopsy report, which is what I think this whole case comes down to, is the interpretation of the pathology.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. I mean, when you get down to brass tacks, that's it.
That's what it comes down to.
100%.
Depending on how you view that autopsy report is whether or not this could be a homicide.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to make us small. I'm going to pull up the doc just a little bit. So kind of like, and this is the part where, like, as we kind of lead into, my asking you what your impression of that particular investigation was,
Yeah.
so the timeline in terms of how it breaks down, and this is again coming directly from the most recent findings. All right, so the following timeline of events was compiled by the undersigned based on Philly Police Department's documented review of calls, response reports, key card swipe logs from Ellen's apartment building, and surveillance video from the same location. It should be noted that there's an approximate 4-minute variation between the cited sources. So this is the way it goes down. 11:32, Ellen enters the parking garage of the apartment complex per key card swipe. So that's, to me, a pretty reliable, like kind of a nice little anchor there in terms of when she gets home. I find that to be a pretty reliable source. So 1:53, the fiance then enters the parking lot of the apartment complex per a key card swipe. At 4:51, the fiance, Sam, enters the gym of the apartment building per key card swipe, and that's corroborated by surveillance video in the lobby. So this is where shit starts getting weird. So 5:30, the fiance on surveillance video leaving the gym and walking towards the concierge desk in the lobby of the apartment building. 5:31, fiance on surveillance video getting on the lobby elevator while reading his mail. 6:10, fiance on surveillance video leaving a lobby elevator and walking toward the concierge desk. 6:13 p.m., fiance on surveillance video getting on the lobby elevator. 6:25 on surveillance. Again, he's leaving the lobby elevator. At 6:31, he's once again on surveillance walking through the apartment building lobby while talking on his cell phone. Now, one of the things that drives me nuts about this case, which I guess considering it's an apartment building as opposed to like a hotel, but it's got that hotel feel to it when you kind of look at it, how it's laid out.
Yeah.
There's no videos on any of the floors, right? So
Of course there isn't.
We're not having this discussion if there was video on those floors, because we know exactly what the fuck Sam was up to or not up to.
Yeah.
If we had that, but that's
Yeah.
simply not the case. So
Was there any mangling with the door before ever going down to the gym?
exactly.
We would be able to see that. From the inside, was someone messing with that door, maybe doing something to it before we would know. We would have that answer.
Or does he come back up, or had he killed her earlier? He comes back up in order to build an alibi. And again, this is all just speculation, but he comes back up, goes in, he then locks the door and then rips it open to make it appear as if he had been outside, and then had to barge his way in, him knowing that there's no video in the hallway. I mean, and frankly, that's probably going to make less noise if he's locked it from the interior in order to make it seem like he had been locked out, him pulling with great force just to kind of rip that thing out of the wall. So, I mean, that exists as a possibility in the world, because I've seen the videos where guys are like, they're showing like it's relatively easy to be able to slide a piece of string. And they went through kind of this like 5-minute demonstration on how you can get in from the outside by disengaging that lock with like a string, and it wasn't rocket science, but I could see it creating kind of a weird situation if one of his neighbors ends up walking out in the hall and they're like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" "Oh, nothing,
What are you
man.
doing?
I'm locked out of the plate." Yeah,
Here's another question. How do we know the lock was broken that day?
exactly.
Right. I mean, the crime scene photos, there's been observations in those photos. What would you expect to see if the lock had been broken that day? Chat. What would you expect to see? You
Right.
expect to see some debris on the floor, right?
Exactly.
Something. There was none. That's concerning.
That is super concerning. That is
Yeah.
super, super concerning because
And
you're
see how we
right.
just look at it? We just look at it commonsensical, right? We don't have
Right.
to like be an expert. It's just like you break a door, you would expect to see some type of debris on the ground.
I'm
From
gonna
what's been
see some
reported, there
little
was none.
chips of wood, man. Some little chips of wood from that
Nobody's
door,
gonna have time to clean that up, right? If you're
and
dealing
nobody's
with your
gonna think to do
fiance.
it. Nobody's gonna
Yeah,
think
those
to do it. And
so
yeah, it's crazy. Well, so here, let me ask you this: in terms of when you looked at the crime scene photos, because I don't have an independent recollection of it, did they take pictures of the lock and the floor before they hired the professional crime scene cleaning company to come in and clean it up? Like, did they
yeah.
get pictures
I
before
believe they
they?
took. I haven't seen the picture of the lock, but apparently they took pictures of the lock and the area around the lock, and that's where there was an independent investigator who said there was no debris on the floor.
Wow.
But overall, to address that right now, that's another major problem with this case is when you go in there, yeah, you might come to some conclusions or some opinions on what happened. I think that's natural, but right.
Yeah.
And if it's not 100%, and we just established it never is, you play it
Right.
safe because you only get one shot at it. You bring crime scene techs in, you treat it as a potential homicide, you
Right.
forensically examine the scene, you take everything that you would if you knew it was a homicide, you take all the evidence that you can to make sure that there's no chain of custody issues. And then worst case scenario, it's ruled that it was not a homicide and you can go back and give that all back. And what, you have a couple hours invested into it that didn't work out, but now by not doing it you can't go back and reverse engineer it, so now you're shit
Exactly.
out of luck.
And you can't go to the Greenberg family and say, "Here, you know what? We hear you. We're going to give you this investigation file because we did a thorough investigation on it, and boom, here it is. Have at it."
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have
Yeah,
the opportunity to do that either. So you're stuck
right.
behind the eight ball because you
Major
just,
problem.
yeah, dude, it's brutal. All right, so let's keep running through the timeline. So
Yeah.
again, 6:33, he's getting on the elevator. 6:33 p.m. is when he finally makes the 911 call to the fiance, or Sam calls it 911. Medics respond at 6:35. 6:37, officers from Philly, they respond. 6:40, Ellen is pronounced dead at the scene. 6:42, firemen on surveillance video getting on the lobby in the elevator, or getting on the elevator in the lobby. And then the cops on surveillance at 6:45, getting on the lobby elevator. 6:47, medics, they're getting on the elevator. 8:15, detectives from Philly PD, they respond. 8:27, the MEO investigator arrives at the scene. 9:20, homicide detectives from Philly, they respond. And then 9:55, the final document assessment of the body at the scene made by the MEO investigator. 11:25, the fiance arrives by police transport to the Northwest Detectives Division of the Philly Police Department for questioning. So that's kind of like how the whole thing goes. Now,
Mhm.
one of the things, and I don't know if Derek, if you were able to watch the most recent, I think it was on Hulu. It
Yep.
was,
603.
yep. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was the first time that anybody had ever talked to at length the door guy, right? The guy who was down
Yeah,
there,
as far as I know, yes, but yeah, that's the
right?
most prominent one. That's the one that I think is kind of reinvigorated this case, where now everyone's diving into it because of that documentary, which I thought overall was done pretty well. It was
I
kind of in
did
the
too.
middle. I thought it
Yeah,
was pretty down the middle.
yeah, I did too. I thought that they were fair, in their assessment. When in a case like this, to me, that gives it more credibility. Like I don't want a documentarian coming in on a case where it's clearly not clear. I mean, and I don't want people to get upset. I know that I happen to believe that this was a homicide myself. So just let me get that out there. But again, I don't know for sure. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm not willing to say that. Yes, I think that it was a homicide, but there does, as Derek said right in the beginning, man, there exists the possibility that Sam didn't do shit. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, that we have to accept that as a possibility in this case.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that that's not what I mean. My position's different, you know, but and unfortunately, because of the investigation in this case, I don't know that we're ever going to get an answer. You know what I
You're
mean? Like,
unfortunately, you're probably right.
right. You know, so we've got this situation where the doorman, where there was this statement that was made, wherein Sam says it, and then I think that a cop miswrites the fact that when Sam came down, said, "Hey, I'm locked out of my place," that the doorman went up with him. Okay,
Yeah.
so there was always this fact out there that it sounds like turns out not to be a fact.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah. No,
that
nobody went upstairs.
nobody went upstairs with him, so he's operating
Mm.
alone. You know, and in terms of you being a cop, like it allows me to give them a little more grace in terms of at least being told that initially, that look, this guy had a dude with him when he went up to gain entrance into the apartment. You know what I'm saying? Because that's
Yeah.
a vastly different thing than him going up alone. If you've got somebody
Right.
who corroborate his story and say, "Yeah, I was up there," but where I lose the grace is when they don't fucking turn around and ask the guy themselves. Like, how do you not have that conversation, man,
Yeah. No,
with
I
that
completely
dude?
agree. I
Yeah,
completely agree. And then in the latest report, I will say there was at least one neighbor, I think there was two, but at least one neighbor who says, listen, I didn't see the latch, but I clearly saw Sam messing with the door and it wouldn't open. Like it would not open. There was something obstructing the door. It looked like it was the latch, but I can't sit here and tell you that I physically saw it was the latch. It could have been something else, but they stated that at that moment they had came out of their apartment or they were returning to their apartment and Sam was trying to make entry into the apartment but couldn't get in.
yeah, and presuming that all the apartments in that building are kind of set up the same way in terms of security. I think they're apartments, they're not condos, so I don't think people are going to be dumping their own money into it in terms of bulking up their security on their places. So
Yeah,
I'm going to assume that every apartment has that kind of that same latch type lock.
more than
So
likely. Yeah, for economical reasons, you buy them in bulk.
exactly. And so,
Yeah,
you know, the thought of Sam maybe theoretically could have just been faking, like he couldn't get in. He sees a guy coming out of his spot and he's like, oh, it's like shit, you know, he's opening the door an inch and he's kind of like stopping it, like, oh,
yeah,
I can't get, you know, like there's no conversation. To me, Derek, it's a little weird, but like I'm an overly friendly guy. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
if I were walking out of my apartment and my neighbor on my same floor was like having a problem getting in, I would have stopped and like shot the shit with them and been like, yo, is there any way I could help you, man? You like you know,
Yeah,
you want me to grab some tools or some shit? Anything, you
yeah.
know, and to me it's a little weird that no conversation took place with regard to that. But you know, I
Yeah,
mean,
it was brief. There's also a possibility. There's so many possibilities, and I go
I
drive
know.
myself crazy going over all the scenarios. But there's also a possibility if Sam's involved, based on what maintenance workers and other people have reported, that it allegedly was possible to lock that door from the outside, like to engage that latch from
Yeah,
the outside. And because there's no cameras up there, hypothetically, let's say Sam did kill Ellen and now has to create this narrative. He could have latched that door, however you do it, from the outside
right,
and waited to make entry until he had an independent party, like a
right,
neighbor,
right.
see him
Yes,
struggling with the latch.
right.
So that's also, I mean, there's so many scenarios.
I
There's so
know.
many scenarios.
And that's exactly that video that I was talking about, because I went on to YouTube, and it was right on YouTube, and it was somebody engaging that lock from the outside to deal
Exactly.
with that exact scenario. Because
Yeah.
again, I mean, if you're trying to build yourself like kind of a bulletproof alibi, and that's a pretty good way to do it. You know, do you want somebody to, like you said, you want somebody corroborating the fact that you were out there, it was locked, they saw it was locked, and that
Now that
you
they,
had
now that
right
somebody sees it, now he can make entry.
not right now I'm
Now he
in.
can make,
Now I'm in.
yep. And
So
there's so many things. I'm sure you're going to go over it. Like with the timeline, we, there's a lot of things there, but there's some issues with the timeline as well, as far as Ellen's activity, allegedly Ellen's activity in conjunction with that timeline you just read. There's so much stuff.
I know.
We could spend 5 hours on this.
Easily, easily. So all right, so this is the part of it where you were talking about, and I kind of made a note of it, and this is where the neighbor refers, and it's on page 11 here, where he is coming out of his place. Okay, he's the sixth floor neighbor, and he actually saw him trying to get in between 5:30 and 5:45 p.m.,
Yeah.
knocking
Yep.
and asking to be let inside. The report on page 11, it states that the neighbor estimated the fiance had intermittently knocked and asked to be let into the apartment for approximately an hour following the neighbor's first sighting of him in the hall. To me, dude, that's just so weird. Like you said, there is no way in hell I am standing out there for an hour and
Yeah.
continually knocking on the door. If my
Sending text messages.
right,
You you don't
if
you have
my
no
loved
idea.
one's in there, right? Oh, you're
I'm
in deep
going in.
shit. Wait till I get in there. You're like, what? What are you
I
talking
live here. I live here, and if my wife isn't answering within 5-10 minutes of me trying to gain entry, for some reason I don't have access, I'm breaking that window
about?
out. That's
100%,
that's
dude.
it. That's it. I'm gonna replace it because I'd rather be safe than sorry. She could be in
100%.
there being held against her will up in the bedroom. I don't know.
We have
So
no
I'm
idea.
going in. I'm
Yeah.
going in. I'm going in.
If you know for a fact that you have left your at this point fiance or your wife or your loved one in that apartment when you left to go down to the gym, and you come back up, the door's fucking locked, they're not answering out to you, calling out to them or on the phone, it's insane to me to think that
Yeah.
anybody would have waited for like you're going in, man. Like you were
Yeah. Sam
immediately
himself
going.
said she never locked that door with the
Yeah.
latch, whether she was unless she was sometimes sleeping or showering. That would be the only two occasions.
Which makes it even like from his perspective more puzzling to me.
Yeah.
The fact that he knows that and he finds that there's no expediency that needs to take place right then and there in that moment in time when he knows that that's not her thing to lock that. It's another one of those things that you kind of put in that column where like you're like, oh man, Sam, like there's just so
Yeah.
much shit you fucked up, bro.
Now
Um,
looks not looking good.
it's not looking good. All right, so as far as I want to like I'm going to go back to page 9 because this is where the concierge shit comes in. And okay, so the concierge reports that Ellen's fiance came to the front desk, and when they're always referring to the fiance as Sam. Okay, so Sam comes to the front desk sometime between 6 and 7, indicating that he's locked out of his apartment. The concierge described the fiance as appearing agitated and sweaty. Okay, so which is I mean, you could take that any way you want. The concierge reportedly instructed the fiance to return to the 6th floor and call out to Ellen while the concierge returned to call her from the front desk. I guess trying to sync up, like phone's going to be ringing, he's calling out to her. They're trying to get her attention in a couple of different ways. So the fiance reportedly left the lobby and then went to the elevators. And then on page 10, the maintenance supervisor was reportedly called by the building concierge around 6:30 regarding a lockout in 6:03. He offered the master key to unlock the apartment, to which the concierge replied that they were asking for a tool to unhook the inside door latch. So the maintenance supervisor reportedly handed the phone to to Sam, who proceeded to explain that the inside door latch was engaged. So, but nowhere in the case file does it document who specifically witnessed the actual moment of entry, which is where this case lies, right? And I mean, does the lack of documentation as a former cop like bug the shit out of you?
Yeah, the fact of the entire documentation, photography, having crime, like I said, having crime scene text come out, forensically analyzing everything, taking in impressions of the lock latch, making sure that we can recreate that at a later date where we can set up the same lock with the same latch and break it 10 times, some from the outside, some from the inside, to see if we can recreate the damage observed in the photos from which way would be more plausible. The fact that we can't do any of that because we didn't take initial impressions of the broken lock is concerning. And that's just one area.
Yeah.
But yes, that is something that's a big point of contention here. Although I don't put as much emphasis on the latch as other people do, because yeah, you could go one way or other with it. And I'm sure if we broke the lock 10 times, it's going to break 10 different ways.
Yep.
I still think it comes down to the pathology, but yeah, the lack of investigation, the lack of uh, effort that was put in to initially make sure they dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's just in case something came out in the autopsy report that didn't align with what they initially believed is extremely unfortunate. And
Right.
it has us building a house now on a shitty foundation.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So, in terms of, let's kind of pinpoint to me some of your bigger concerns with the timeline in terms of Ellen and Sam. Like,
Yeah.
what are the things that you kind of were able to pick out that you thought were like, man, these are problematic one way or another?
Well, I mean, for me, the first thing would be she's engaging in a conversation with a friend. They're texting back and forth. She's explaining that she's stressing out over the grading and when it's due and all that. And their conversation, and I apologize if I'm wrong on the times. You can correct me if you know them. I believe it was 3:37 p.m. where she doesn't respond to the friend. Right. There's after
Right.
that, there's no response or no activity on her phone.
Right.
The next activity involving Ellen isn't until I believe 4:45 or 4:46, which is approximately a minute before Sam leaves the apartment, and that's activity on Ellen's work phone. So now we're talking about essentially an hour window where we don't hear anything from Ellen digitally, right?
Right.
And that's a big gap. That's a big window where something could have transpired and would also allow time for the staging of a crime scene. So
Yep.
that is one concern that I have with those two timestamps. Another thing that I brought up, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this because it was mixed on my channel, is I believe it's 5:24. He's down in the gym. It's about 7 to 10 minutes before he's heading back upstairs, and he tries to call Ellen. Now, me, and again, I think this is an individual thing, but if I'm downstairs in the gym and I know my wife or fiance is upstairs and whatever I'm going to ask her, I can ask her in 5 minutes, I'm probably not calling her. I'm killing my workout and then I'm going upstairs and talking to her. But he tries to make a phone call to her at 5:24. She obviously doesn't answer. To me, that was interesting. It may be a nothing burger, but but some people were quick to correct me, like, oh, my husband's a chatterbox. Like as soon as he gets to his car, even though he lives 10 minutes from the gym, he's calling me asking me, what's up or what's for dinner. So I don't think it's like I'm gonna hang the case on it, but it was just something
No,
that I
and
read that I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
I'm with you 100%. To me, that seems like a call that you're putting in place so that you got that record, that
Yeah,
this is
like,
when
oh,
I left
I
the
thought
gym.
she was alive. I thought she was
Right.
alive.
Right. And
Yeah.
it establishes that's when you're walking out of the gym, beyond just the video itself. And because I'm the same, dude. If I'm just taking the elevator and going up to my apartment, why the fuck am I calling her or texting her? You know what I mean? I'll
Yeah.
be up there in less than 5 minutes. I'll be up there in a minute and a half. So yeah,
Exactly.
dude. Yeah,
Exactly. So I was like, oh, that's a little interesting. And I might be picking at things here just kind of, but you have to, right?
you
Because you
have
don't
to.
have a ton to go off of.
The devil's in the
Um,
details, man.
that was in the details. And by the way, we haven't even touched the actual autopsy. We haven't even mentioned 20 stab wounds. We
Right.
haven't talked about the N and T diagram where you see two stab wounds to the 3 and 4 vertebrae, where it just damage her cerebellum and allow her not to have any or very limited mobility of her arms.
Right.
We haven't got to that. We
Because
haven't
that
even got
that
to that.
had to proceed. If it's her, that would have had to have preceded her burying the knife into her heart.
Correct.
Right.
And
So
I'm not an expert here, but I brought an expert on and there was blood there, so it wasn't the last stab wound. The last stab wound is going to be the stab wound to the chest. And even though there was still blood there as well, she was still alive when that happened. But
yep.
yes, the way it was explained to me, and I'm not trying to promote my show, but I had a
You
pathologist
should.
on who in episode 2 who broke this all down much more eloquently than I ever could. But basically, you have the vertebrae numbered from lowest number one being one at top, going down, and I believe it was 2 and 3 where the stab wounds were. It might have been 3 and 4, and one of those would have damaged the cerebellum, and then 6 and 7, I believe, is where the I'm sorry, 6 and 7 is the vertebrae which control the arms and legs. So if you have this chain and 2 and 3 is damaged, then no signal gets to 6 and 7. And
Right.
that was the argument that she made, that she would be physically incapable of stabbing herself in the chest after stabbing herself in the neck. That
So
was the simplistic way of saying it. Again, she says it way better than me.
yeah, I mean, like it's her business. So like
Yeah.
as far as her final determination, did she put any weight into the fact that it seems like what the kind of the running narrative coming out of Philadelphia these days is that could have been done not by Ellen herself, that it was either done during the first autopsy. Did she put any weight into that? Because I think that's what they're trying to say in
Yeah.
terms of that particular injury that would have seemingly made it impossible for her to shove that knife into her heart?
Her
Did she have any thoughts on that?
her interpretation was the stab wound, specifically N and T. If you're looking at that diagram, were approximately, I think she said 3 inches. Again, these numbers, they're in the report, but it was deep. So if you had something that was millimeters, maybe it could have been done by a doctor during examination. But to have something damaged that deep into the spinal cord column, she didn't find that to be valid. No,
Okay.
her determination just to spoil it for all you guys is that this should have been ruled a homicide, not even undetermined. Her
Right.
belief is that it should have been ruled a homicide. And ironically, the initial doctor who examined Ellen, Dr. Osborne,
Right.
also ruled it a homicide, which is another reason why people are so frustrated with this case. Because
Yeah.
the guy who had first hands and eyes and ears on this case, who got to examine her body, looked at all the injuries and said, yeah, this is a homicide.
Yeah. I mean, and that, like, imagine being the Greenbergs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's where this thing lays with me. It's like that poor family that's sitting there that, and again, like from a human side, you never want to think that your own kid would do that to themselves. So I think you start in a place like that. Like I think that there could be situations where you might be in a little bit of a denial if your child is thought to have maybe have killed themselves, and you're thinking about every conversation that you've had with them recently, and you're like, did I have any signs? Is there any indication that they had given me that I just was missing when I was talking to, you know what I mean? So you're torturing yourself over that kind of shit. And then, as the facts start to come out, and what becomes the most important fact is that they just fucked up the investigation. So it all that does is compound just the torture that this family's going through. And then, like at the end of the day with this case, man, and like you said, we could spend hours, but I promise I was only going to keep you an hour. I'll definitely have you back. But at the end of the day with this thing, man, like the realities, we're just never going to get an answer because of the lack of proper investigation on the front end of it. I mean, like, because everything can be debated. It's that simple.
Mm,
You can have a
mhm.
brilliant doctor, a brilliant forensic pathologist on your show who's going to look at it and have a completely different interpretation as another brilliant doctor who's also looked at it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, everything at this point is boiling down to that interpretation, and
Mhm.
interpretation in the law is frankly everything. I mean, like if you're talking about a prosecutor and a defense attorney, we're looking at the same statutes and we're interpreting them differently. I mean, that's exactly what the practice of law is, just generally, not even just crimes, is the interpretation of the law. And I mean, like when you're reading through appellate briefs, you're realizing that two people are reading the same thing in a very different way. Now, whether it's because it suits them, or whether they believe it, who knows? But I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you've got two skilled attorneys going at it and they're able to find at least some precedent that's going to support their position, even if it's not necessarily the kind that you'd want, I mean, everything boils down to interpretation. In this case, man, we're like, I just think that we're never, like, sadly, I just don't think the Greenbergs are ever going to get an answer. I don't.
No, you're probably right. I still would like to see a couple things, right? First off, you're probably right. We're never going to get an answer for Ellen, more than likely. I hope that I'm wrong.
Me too.
However, we can learn from it. We can make changes based on this case and how the procedure went, right? And there's a couple things that we can do even now to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. And first thing would be, I'd like to see an independent party come in and do an analysis of the autopsy report, because the one thing that we do have is the autopsy report. It was conducted. You have all the information. You can still look at it. But like you said, to your point, it's a science, but there's an interpretation of that science. The second thing that I would like to see done is an independent investigation, but not necessarily on Ellen's death, because as you mentioned, the foundation's just not there. The investigation wasn't conducted thoroughly initially, so the investigators coming in would be limited in what they could process and what they could review.
Yeah.
What they can investigate and what they should investigate from a federal level is what happened after the fact, from the pathologist's initial ruling to who they spoke with, who was involved in the process internally, what happened at the police department, were any politicians involved, to
Yep.
see what happened that caused this to change the way that it did.
Right.
We need to investigate that, because that still can be done. Where if you have someone at the federal level come in, interview everyone to see if everything was on the up and up, and if it wasn't, expose that, to not only hold these people accountable, but also serve as a deterrent for anybody in the future. So
Yeah.
although we may not get justice for Ellen, we still can learn from Ellen's case and make sure that there's accountability in it so that other people watching this, from investigators to pathologists to attorneys to whoever is involved in this field, will see that there are repercussions for your actions.
Yeah.
And I still think that can be done. We can use this as a living example of what not to do, whether it's a suicide or a homicide. I would take this case as a police officer. I would show it to my new detectives and say, this is what you don't do when
Right.
you walk into a crime scene. So there is learning to be done here.
100%, man. Yeah, and it's super well said, and you're right. Now, I don't know offhand whether or not they ever filed suit. I know they've filed various civil suits, I think, pertaining to other things relating to the autopsy itself. Are you aware? Did they ever file suit in terms of trying to go after the city for the?
I believe, again, chat, hit me if I'm wrong. I believe there was something and it was settled with the agreement that there would be an
Yeah,
independent investigation, which is what you have here.
yeah. Like, and I didn't know if that was a straight up like kind of like a injunctive type thing that they had filed in terms of trying to get him to do it, or if that was like, because my thinking to go kind of along what you were talking about with like a Fed investigation or like a DOJ type thing, which I would love to see, is that the discovery that you get in a civil case in terms of being able to dig and just the ability to be able to obtain documents that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get in a criminal type of prosecution. It's just different. I mean, civil
Yeah.
cases get different. You got the depositions. You can haul anybody in that you think is relevant to what you're trying to prove in terms of being the plaintiff in that case. So yeah, I don't know offhand whether or not that was done, but like I always am talking about, like, look, man, you're going to find way more out about the inner workings of these cases and civil cases, just because you don't have the limitations that you have when you're dealing with criminal cases. Obviously you've got the
Mm,
amendments that are always going to affect, in terms of what you're able to get in terms of evidence. It's
yeah.
very protective, whereas it's much more of a free for all in civil cases. So same, dude. I really hope that we get an answer, and if we don't, that it does become a teachable moment for everybody in the field, no matter where they are, that, look, this is not how you do it, because if you
No.
do, this is what you get. So, all right, dude, tell everybody, like, I am huge on promoting my friends. So tell everybody where all your shit is, man, your pod, your channel. Tell them we've been dropping the links for both the pods in the chat the whole way, but tell everybody where they can find you, dude.
So if you're interested in long form podcasts, like 3, 4 parts, sometimes 7 parts, 2, 3 hours long, I do a podcast called Crime Weekly with my co-host Stephanie Harlow, who also has her own YouTube channel. And we dive into the well-known cases like BTK, which we're covering right now, to more obscure cases that are unsolved. And then I have my own channel, which is Detective Perspective. That's been around for about 2 years. I do only unsolved cases, or like in this instance, Ellen's case, which was highly recommended and suggested by the people who follow me. So I finally decided to do it. Usually it's only 1 part episode, so it's consumable on a drive to work or from work. Ellen Greenberg was 3 parts because there was just no way I could do it in 1 part. But yeah, those are my two podcasts. I also have a coffee company called Criminal Coffee. The reason it's called Criminal Coffee is we take a portion of the profits and we donate it to cold cases that need DNA
Love
testing
that.
specifically. We've already solved 2 cases using the profits from Criminal Coffee. And then my PI firm, Break Investigative Group, we have 2 genealogists. So we'll pay for the DNA testing,
Oh,
and
that's
then my
awesome.
genealogists do the actual IgG work pro bono. And through that process, we've been able to solve 2 cases. Would love
Oh,
to solve
dude.
more, but it's a slow process. And then we'll cover those cases on Crime Weekly. So, for example, we just did one out of Houston, 1992. Jane Doe found in the woods. Her children thought that she had just left them and went off with some other person. They find this Jane Doe many years ago, not knowing who she is. We take that body, we process the bones. We're able to get some DNA. My genealogist upload it in conjunction with Moxie Forensics, upload it to the familial database. We're able to find living relatives. We go down to Houston. We find some people and say, hey, did any of your relatives go missing around 92? Yeah, my mother. She left us. And so we had Spencer, her daughter, on recently,
Wow.
ironically, who was a fan of Big Brother. But she went this entire time thinking that her mom just left her. And in reality, she was killed. And now it's an active homicide investigation. So
Wow.
it's amazing what the true crime community can
It's
do. It's not
amazing.
just covering these cases and sensationalize them, it's actually contributing to solving them. So I
Yes.
have my whole little ecosystem going. Love what I do. I don't even call it work. It's fun. And
It's
I know that's
amazing.
kind of a weird way to describe
Oh,
it, but I've been doing this since I was 20 years old, and I don't feel like I've worked in the last 20 years.
yeah, dude. And the shit that you do is amazing. Like I love what you do. And I mean, you're one of the good guys, man. You're one of the dudes that's out there trying to make a difference, and you are, in fact, making a difference
Trying.
with the work. I mean, dude, that's all we can ask. And it's like I've got the same thing going on, as you know. And I'm going to squeeze you. I need you to do that promo for Buried inside the John Wayne Gacy
That's
investigation.
coming out. That's
I
coming
need
out.
that.
What are we
I
doing that
need
next week, right? Yeah, it's
yeah, I
coming
think
next week.
so. I think so, the
Yep.
17th. So,
The
but like
17th, the weekend
what
17th.
what I want more than that is, and I know you're busy as fuck, dude. I get it. If you listen to episodes 6 through 10 of my investigation in that case, because my old man was his lawyer, I decided to dig into it. I talked to all the old cops. I interviewed all the old cops, it's an amazing podcast. But I just want you to skip right to 6 through 10, because I want to come back and have a live with you on what I uncovered from the cops and how they actually got Gacy. Dude, I promise you, it will blow your fucking mind. Like
I
that
love it.
case,
Hey, you
that
just sold
case.
me.
Oh, dude, it will blow. Like, forget 1 through 5, even though you should listen, but just to get you, because then I want to talk to you about it from the cop perspective. Because when I uncovered in real time, because I did that thing for 2 years, I was recording that, and I was all the interviews. It was all in real time. Like I didn't have the shit in the can. You know what I mean? It was like we'd go out, we'd interview an old cop. I'd come back, I'd write the script, we'd record. My producer would, so it was like unbelievable. It was like an incredible, like 18, 19-month experience. But like what we uncovered,
Holy
dude,
shit.
I'm dying for you to listen to it, because it's like it's one of those things where you're gonna be like, holy shit, dude. And like Gacy's dead. He's dead and gone. It's who cares?
Nah.
But in terms of how they got him and the lengths that they went to do it was fucking unbelievable. And I would love, love, love to be able to talk to you about it, because I think that you'll just be fascinated with the whole concept of it, man. So
Yeah, no, I listen, I love those types of cases because I have never claimed to be like the top detective. I always say like there's people who've been doing this type of work since I've been born. I'm 41 years old. So in relative to like some of the guys out there who've done this type of work, I'm a baby. And I'm constantly learning. And a major reason why I like covering these cases is learning from others who have done it and the way they solve the crime and
yes,
what tools I can take from them and put in my toolbox because
that's
I'm
what
still
makes you
learning to this
smart,
day.
dude.
Yeah, and we're always learning, man. We're always learning. Like
Always.
even
Like
BTK right now for me. Yeah, we're covering the case, we're telling the story, but I'm taking notes on how he was caught. Was there anything innovative done in that case that I never thought of?
yeah.
Now it's really DNA, right? Like that's the future. DNA and AI is the future, which is a slippery slope with the
Oh,
AI, but
dude,
DNA.
we
Oh,
got to
you just
have
put your
the AI convo. We got to have the AI
I
convo.
just got that reaction. That was
Oh,
a subconscious
oh
fucking
man.
defense reaction.
Oh man.
But
There
I'm
is.
with you. I'm with you.
It scares the fuck out of me. Not so like I see the incredible utility of it, man. Like it is, but like the in the wrong hands, the shit
It's
that people
scary.
can do with it is fucking terrifying, man. So
There's a
I'm
new
like,
movie coming out. There's a new movie coming out, and I don't know the name of it, and I'm not trying to plug it, but it's with Chris Pratt, and it's kind of along the lines where like AI's. It's kind of like the movie Minority Report,
yeah,
but it's Chris Pratt, and there's something in there where he develops an AI system to predict crime, and it ends up turning on him,
oh
and he of
shit,
killing his wife. I haven't seen the movie; it hasn't came out yet. I just saw the trailer. Does anybody in the chat know? Come on, it's like one word. Forgot
somebody's
what it
got to
is.
know.
Somebody's gonna
Somebody's
know it. This is the pop quiz, but someone will Google it. But yeah, no, I'm with you. AI is scary, especially you see how early we are into AI and some of the videos that are already out there. Like I've seen videos with like Kobe Bryant,
yeah,
where if I didn't know better, I think it was him.
right.
And so it's insane when it
It's
comes to like
insane.
potential defenses you have for people now, like and also how you could charge someone with a crime based on AI. But yeah,
Yeah,
DNA is a big one for me, and I think It's not the end all. Mercy, thank you. Your chat came through. It's
Always,
Mercy.
dude, always.
And so yeah, DNA is huge, and I'm constantly learning from that. And genealogy, as impressive as it is
God, it's so
now, I can't
fascinating.
imagine what it's going to be in 10 years.
Oh, dude. And
We
it
just, like I
right.
said, we just covered an entire case about Joanne Zamora, who's that Jane Doe I just talked about from
Yeah.
Houston. How we figured out who she was and reunited her with her family. The way that's done is incredible.
It's incredible, dude. So I think probably halfway through the Gacy season when there are still 5 unidentified Gacy victims. So, and I'm pretty tight with the middlemans, and I'm always telling David, I'm like, dude, like I'm fucking riding this Cook County sheriff, like Sheriff Moran, who's kind of ahead of the Gacy investigation. I'm like, I'm riding this guy like a rented mule to get him to send the shit to you guys because I know that you'll be able to pull DNA from they have the jawbones. And David's always like, man, it's like, we'll be able to. I'm like, I have no doubt. Like, so I'm always trying to like push them to get them over to Othram or Parabon. I mean, like, but Othram to
There's some
me,
Intermountain Forensics. There's Moxie Forensics does a great. Just a lot of great labs doing
yeah,
independent work. Yeah.
dude, they're just doing amazing shit. But so in the middle of that thing, and then I'll let you go, they end up identifying it was DNA Doe. Okay, so they're the ones who would, and they had done their
The
IgG
DNA
work.
Doe Project.
Yes, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was so. I'm like I said, I think I'm about like episode 18, and they identify one of the victims. It's this kid, Francis Alexander, who had been unidentified for 40 plus years. I'm like so excited. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make my way into this fucking press conference. There's no way they're keeping me out. So I get in there because I really wanted to get in Moran's face. And I'm like, look, man, like everything that we need is here. It's in place. What is the holdup? These families deserve to know who these kids are. And, you know, it was just like that kind of ability to be able to do. And that was the first time that I really came to understand at a much deeper level how that IgG really works. You know what I mean? And it's such a fascinating thing. And, you know, and for another debate I'd love to have in terms of when they can use it. I would love to know what because my thing is, it's way too important and too powerful of a tool for law enforcement not to be able to use. But like my thing is, I think that they need to get a warrant to use it. In terms of going right to IgG, it's a fascinating conversation. I'll flesh it out for you because it's like what law enforcement is saying now is they're classifying it as a tip, and it's much more than that. Like it's much more than a tip. Like I thought had Koberger gone to trial, ultimately would have been the Supreme Court case that would have landed. They didn't need to use the IgG at trial because obviously they had Koberger's fucking DNA. But in terms of how they got to him, they used the IgG, you know, in terms of doing the poll at the house in Pennsylvania. They were able to figure out through the YSTR because were able to, you know, develop a profile with the father. And they do the
Yes.
IgG and they land on fucking Koberger. So like eventually I thought, okay, if this thing goes to trial and he's convicted, that's the case where it's going to fight because it's going to have to go up to the Supreme Court and be done. It's way too powerful. And in my estimation, there's just nothing on the planet that gives anybody, law enforcement or anybody, more information about us individually than our DNA. And the fact that we share it with family members that go back 1,000 years, I think that there is, because the law as it's currently situated is very clear on this. And that's we do not have a privacy interest in other people's shit. Right. So like if you were chasing me, you saw me fucking like you know, like conducting a crime, I lost you. I go and run through my buddy's apartment. I put my gun under the fucking couch. And then you guys conduct a bad search on that dude's house based on whatever. I cannot come and file a motion to suppress saying that you filed or that you guys did a bad search on that dude's property. I don't have a property. I have no privacy interest in that guy's
Expectation of privacy.
no expectation at all. So, but I think that I do have an expectation of privacy with respect, or there's at least an argument to be made in my familial DNA that I happen to share with a cousin 16th removed. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I've seen the arguments, man, they're really fascinating. Because
so are you contesting again? This could probably be another hour conversation. So like, are you talking in the sense of like a trash pull? Like, is that where abandoned property being left on the sidewalk, or are you talking? Okay, we have DNA. and we're using IgG through the databases to make familial connections.
The
You're
latter.
saying there should be a search for that. That's interesting because, again, the argument could be made you're just finding DNA. You have DNA at a crime scene. You don't know it's linked to Bob Mata yet, right?
Right.
But you know that you have DNA of a suspect or a potential suspect. You're uploading it into this database and you're making familial matches with a family member who has been uploaded to that database, however it is, right?
Correct. Right.
So at the time, I don't even know that I'm searching for Bob Mata. I could be searching for, Bill Mata. I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
If I knew who the DNA belonged to at that time, I wouldn't have to do the IgG.
That's right.
So my question would be a much bigger discussion. How do you get a search warrant for a specific person if you don't know who that person is yet?
It's the search warrant to go into the private database. Now I know that ancestry.
Okay. I see interesting.
So because
okay.
it's real easy for law enforcement as it's currently situated to be able to go into, because they're if it's 23andMe or Ancestry, whatever the case may be, and they just say, you know what, I'm going to create an account. And then they're able to access, because people do have the option with some of them.
They did it with Golden State. They did it with Golden State.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we could talk. Where, and again, it's not because we're wrong or right. We just have different response. I want to find the people. I want to give the families justice.
Yeah.
There's a line there, right? Where I fall. I
want
to catch the bad guys.
I
don't think it would be hard to get that warrant. I think in most cases a judge would approve it because at the time you don't even know. It's not like you're going to someone's home. You're just asking to be granted access to use the database. I think most judges, even with just reasonable facts, are going to say, yeah, shoot, go for it.
Exactly. And that's my whole point. Because I want the same thing that you do. I want crime solved. I want people that have gone without answers for decades to get those answers 100%. All I'm saying is, from the perspective of us as citizens, that we have to maintain the Constitution, and because we don't want to live in a world in which we don't have constitutional protections. We just don't. It would be a very different world. So in terms of just saying, all right, look, do a little bit of an investigation, get me a little PC before you run in and just automatically go diving into the IgG. Just do that little
give
amount.
Me something.
So we're not doing a fishing expedition, because like you said, they're going to, if they're close, they'll be able to get enough to be able to get that warrant. But that's where it lies in terms of being.
Your Honor, I don't know who it is, so that's why I need to do the search. I can't tell you. All I can tell you is that this DNA, for example, Koberger, we found DNA on a sheath at the crime scene. We believe that DNA, it doesn't belong to anybody in the home, so we believe that DNA belongs to a potential suspect. No judge is going to say, nah, you can't do it.
Exactly.
So I'm with you. You have to have some articulable facts to say, we believe this specific DNA that we found legally, what is possibly involved in the crime. We'd like to use the database to find out who it is.
And that's all I'm asking for. I'm not it's still, we're still allowed to use the tool. We put some safeguards in place in terms of, because it's pretty easy just to log on and say, all right, I'm going to access shit, pretend like I'm not a cop, and get the fucking information.
That's what they did. That's what they did. And now the private entities have changed their policies where certain websites law enforcement's not allowed to use their databases for that. Or there's opt-ins or opt-outs. I don't know the specifics, but there are some details with it where now they've updated their policies so that law enforcement has to basically ask for permission or just flat out can't do it.
Dude, you're the best. I really appreciate you coming all day. It's been a blast. Let's do it again sometime. I'm going to hound you about I want to do that 6 through 10. I'm telling you, it'll fuck with your head. It'll blow you away. All right, everybody, go listen to and go watch over at Detective Perspective, also Crime Weekly. Anywhere that Derrick's at, it's always worth your time because the dude's the truth. And
likewise,
you look at it the right way, brother. So I love that about you. Thanks,
we're always
man.
learning, man. Appreciate it. Be safe out there. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, man, brother. See ya.
All right, later.
All right, that's it. So Derrick's awesome. I know, people are coming in oh, I'm mad at them because they forget all that. Forget all that. All right, you guys. We've got one new member, Layla. Oh, family hug. Love you. All right. I really I got to get to Allie. I got to take care of my wife. She had major surgery yesterday, as you guys as you may or may not know. She survived it. That's why she wasn't with me today. She is in obviously a lot of pain, and I have to go take care of her. So I do have to wrap this up. I was trying to keep it at an hour. I went a little long. We love you guys so much. Send healing vibes to my wife. Make her wounded wing feel better. She needs all that love and care because we want her back as soon as possible. So I love you guys. Thank you, mods, for everything you do. I thought today might be challenging. I hope that it wasn't. I tried to get in front of it on the front end. I think that Derrick's a great guy, and I think that he's a really, really bright guy that looks at things the right way. And like I said, like I'd love to have him on, and we can have the Rick Allen debate. But as soon as he said right at the forefront, he's like, I don't know that much about it. That tells you he's not dying on any hills with that case. So take that as a grain of salt. All right, y'all. We adore you. We love you so much because without you, I'm just an old man talking about a lot of cases. See you tomorrow.
So